SpongeBob SquarePants, SpongeBob SquarePants, SpongeBob SquarePants. Do 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 do. Psh. Again, do the low ground wall in, man. There's a reason they took it out in Heart of the Swarm. It's because it was awesome. They took it out because it was awesome. So do it. And even if you don't do it, this is silly. Don't trap a worker behind your Raxes. Don't build your Raxes in a place where they can't get add-ons easily. And don't build your Raxes on the low ground if you do not have what it takes to theoretically hold the low ground, right? In TVZ, there is no army you can make that will survive just a roach all-in without a wall-in or a bunker. It's just, there is no such thing. So there's or even just a Ling all-in. Like, if he gets Ling speed at 6 minutes and has, what is it, probably $1,300 worth of Lings, and he attacks you and you don't have a wall-in, you're gonna die. And that's true of any moment throughout the entire game. Zerg, if he was theoretically all-inning with Lings and you don't have a wall-in, at any point in the game, it will kill you, no matter what you have, until you can have Hellions or until you can have, stim combat shields and medevacs. In the early game, you just have to have a wall-in to hide behind. So things like this, where you have part of a wall-in but not the whole thing, not a good idea, man. You will just be dead. So build a wall-in and then put all of your racks behind it and then float them all at once to make a second wall-in on the low ground. You got to go from wall-in to wall-in hopping. You can't be running around without a wall-in. And you will see pro gamers not have wall-ins, but that's because they're playing against pro gamers who don't all-in, you know? So it's like this, the better you are, the less you play like real people. So if you look at your money, boop, boop, boo, da, da, boop, boo, it's really late not to have gas. The whole point of this build is that we're still going to start our upgrades at 8 minutes like we always do, but we're going to give the Zerg fewer resources and us fewer resources. But you can't start your upgrades at 8 minutes if you don't even have gas at 8 minutes, right? You are supply blocked. You have only 4 Marines at a time production capacity at 8 minutes when your income is 800 a minute, which is far more than the 500 that you're budgeting. You do a ton of damage in this first push, and that's amazing. And there's no way you should be able to lose from here, but you didn't do anything behind it. So you just kind of made a bunch of Marines and hoped that you would win. And honestly, you will almost never win with these first Marines. You'll just get ahead. And that's all you really want to do, because the real strategy we're going for is Uber Ups, which is a 2-2 timing attack meant to kill them before Hive. And you're not ever going to be 2-2 if you don't make engineering base. So yeah, like I said, once he knows what you're doing, if he has a large economy, he can counter it pretty darn hard. So you can't count on that to get you a win. You dropped your car? Simon can help you. Say, Simon, help. Uh-oh. Good boy, baby. Anyway, I don't even know that the rest of this game is worth watching. You have 2 guys on gas at 10 minutes. What did you think was going to happen? Alright. More gas. We're getting more gas. We're getting our upgrades, but they're not going to be done until 18 minutes, at which point, we already lost 4 of the minutes that we were supposed to use to win the game. Adding more racks, getting reactor cores, and this is the problem with using timestamps. Like I've said a bunch of times, at 12 minutes you want to get up a bunch more racks, but that assumes that you actually have money coming in at a normal schedule. So we want to see 52 workers at 10 minutes, we see 37. At 12 minutes we want to be max on 72 workers, and instead we have 50. So you're 22 workers behind. It's at 12 minutes on workers. So going up to like a million racks at a point when you don't have the workers to fully mine both of your bases, again, like we talked about before, that means you're taking workers that should be mining and you're telling them to make Raxes that you're not going to be able to afford to use. So it's just like reducing your income for no reason. So When I say build a bunch more racks at 12 minutes, I mean build a bunch more racks 2.5 to 3 minutes before your 2-2 is going to finish. I mean build a bunch more racks when you have 72 workers. And those two things are what 12 minutes means to me. But if your build is behind, you need to adjust when you do things like that. Again, this is a good wall-in. I am happy with this wall-in. Good job, well done. I mean, he can put roaches here and bust it, though. Anyway, whatever. It's a little bit late to be worrying about your wall-in. Command Center. This is good. Again, starting to mass Hellions is questionable, but if that's the composition you want to go for, fine. Again, Hellions without Blue Flame are just kind of bad units. Especially if you don't have the APM to use them for map control. The only two benefits of Hellions... okay, the only one benefit of Red Flame Hellions is map control. Red Flame Hellions have no other benefit. Blue Flame Hellions have two benefits, one of which is that it almost completely negates Lings, and the second of which is that it can be traded very easily for workers. We've talked before about how to cross the field. This is bad. This is bad. You cannot ever in any game count on winning any fight against a Zerg if you don't have a wall in front of you. Or, actually, that's it. If you don't have a wall to hide behind, you can't count on winning a fight. So what we tend to do when we cross the field, we're not counting on winning a fight. What we're trying to do is die but trade efficiently. So you gotta spread your dudes out, man, because if you walk around in a ball like this, you can just lose all your stuff. And now, not only are you tightly packed, but you showed him where you are and you're tightly packed. In exchange for 8 Lings. So look at this. Like, if you don't lose your whole army here, I would be very surprised. He's starting to take the middle because he's silly. You're going to suicide some medevacs at the same time as clumping up to die to fungal. But look at your army. More than half of your army is sitting in your main doing nothing. This is not a fight you should take because this isn't all of your army. This is half of your army. Actually, less than half of your army. So you've got $600 up here, $600 up here, and this is 10, 11, 12 plus 8, $1,600 back here. Actually, with these bunkers and marines in them, it's 1,800, right? So total, you have $3,000 of army that is not in this fight, and your total army size is 4,200. So almost all of your army is not in the fight. So that's just silly. You killed the queen though, so it's okay. So that was really bad. This continues actually to be really bad. You want to spread these dudes out. You want to get mining on your third base a lot earlier. On this map specifically, you kind of... It's so easy for the Zerg to just put creep on all of the bases after... I mean, if he holds the middle for too long, he's going to creep every single base, and then there's no way to get a fourth. And that means that you basically have to win before your main mines out. And your main should, if you're mining at soft cap capacity and you never drop a mule on your main, it should be mined out or starting to lose patches at like 15 or 16 minutes. But if you're doing a build like this one where you're not taking your third early enough, so you have to overmine your main, it's going to mine out much earlier, so at like 14 minutes or 15 minutes. So specifically on this map, you want to undermine your main and your natural and overmine your third. Because it's really important, because you're never going to get a fourth if the Zerg is doing good things. You really don't want to mine out your main too early. So basically, you had to win the game before you lost any patches at your main. So there's no way from this position to win the game. It's impossible. So you have 8 patches. As soon as one of them mines out, this is game over. Okay, so right here, 14 minutes because you're overmining your main is the end of the game. And you don't even have 2-2 done at 14 minutes. So the way that you played this, there's no way to win. So I mean, you can look at what the Zerg did and how it's, you know, what his strategy was, and worry about how you could have won this individual game. But ignoring him completely, if we never ever looked at him and we follow the simple rules of how to win TVZ, you violated one of the rules, man, especially on this map. You mined out a patch in your main before you did any damage to the Zerg. And you didn't win before, yeah. So basically you have to get a killing blow advantage, like a huge advantage, before you mine out any patches in your main. Dun, 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 dun. Another rule you violated, walking around clumped up. Another rule you violated, fighting with less than 100% of your army in one place. Another rule you violated, never do drops while fighting in the first battle. That's something you really, really want to do in the second battle, and it's awesome in the second battle. But in that very first battle, the first battle is your big chance to set the tone for the game. And your goal in that first battle is to break even, because your army was so big and well spread out that you ate up all of his banelings and all of his fungals, and you died, but you traded evenly, and it was awesome. And that can't happen if you take a whole huge chunk of your army and throw it at his main, and then throw another chunk at his third, and blah, blah, blah. Because what's happening when you do a triple-pronged attack like that is that you're saying one of these prongs is going to lose hardcore, and the other two prongs are going to be successful. Now, if your army is the one that loses hardcore, there's no recovering. The game is over, right? Because the whole point of Uber Ups is this suicidal aggression tactic where you beat him and then beat him and then beat him and then beat him in the middle. And you eventually larva starve him and overrun him with this frontal force. So if your main army ever loses a battle really overwhelmingly, and you lose a ton of army in exchange, these other two drops do well, and you kill a ton of drones, that doesn't matter, because he has a bigger army than you now, and he kills you and you die. So you never want to trade army for workers in a situation where it is immediately important that you win the next few minutes. So I've said a lot of times, like in TVTs, someone will do a big drop, kill a bunch of workers, and then you'll go kill them and win the game. And anytime somebody trades army for workers, that gives them an advantage in 3 minutes, right? In 2 minutes, in 3 minutes, right? It's advantageous in the very distant future, but it's not advantageous right then, because you just got rid of some of your army and didn't get rid of any of his army in return. So with the TVZ strategy that we're going for specifically, we have this really strict time limit. We have to win before we mine out anything in our main, which means 14 minutes at the earliest. In this case, it was 14 minutes, or 16 minutes at the very latest, which is still, that only gives us a 2-minute window to actually win the whole game. So because we're in this tight spot where we kind of have to win the game within the next 2 minutes, there's never ever going to be a good time to trade some of your army for some of his workers. Because that's in 2 minutes I have an advantage, but I don't have 2 minutes to wait for that advantage. I have to win net or lose right now. So don't do drops before your first fight in TVZ. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. And it's okay in Heart of the Swarm, where you have speed boost and you can be guaranteed that you're not going to lose anything. Then you can do as many drops as you want. And it's okay if, for example, if your first medevac pops out at 9 minutes and your 2 ops aren't going to be done until 14 minutes, then it's okay at 9 minutes to go do some drops, as long as you try not to lose any army. And those drops, the purpose of those drops are just to say, hey, maybe you should get some mutas because I have drops and drops are annoying. And the purpose of those drops is to say, hey, maybe you should spend some money on army instead of drones. And, you know, to say, hey, I have drops. You need to build spines and spores in all your bases. And, you know, but the purpose of the drops isn't, I'm going to trade army for workers. You never want to be doing that with your drops. That's not what drops are for. And again, things change if you're going for a more late-game viable strategy. If you're going Marine Tank, then it's okay to trade army for workers because you're not trying to win right away. You're trying to have a reasonably good long-term mid-game plan where you have lots of Marines and lots of tanks and lots of Vikings, and you're going to compete okay if you get Ultras and blah, blah, blah. But Marine-only strategies are only viable before Tier 3, and more importantly, they're only viable while your income equals his income. If he has a greater income than you, there's no way to win with a unit that tries to make the whole game about money. Okay? Marines are cost effective in terms of money. So if you make the game all about money and not about supply by having constant fights, Marines are awesome. Marines are not cost effective in terms of supply. So if the game becomes about supply because it goes very long and there are not very many fights, then Marines are terrible. Anyway. So you made mistakes in this game that were, you know, you should have lost this game. This game is a game you should have lost. Get gas earlier. Start your upgrades earlier. Max out earlier. Build your Raxes later. Start mining from your third earlier. Don't oversaturate your main. Don't drop any mules on your main on this map specifically, or on any map where you can't be guaranteed a fourth. Yeah, that's about it. So that Doom Drop, actually, Doom Drops are awesome. I'm heavily in favor of Doom Drops in theory, and I bet you that Doom Drop did really well with what you had. But again, you got to look at what you had. All right, so you've got a 6.4k army against his 8k army, right? He's got a 20% bigger army than you. So I think you're going to trade pretty well. Another problem, you didn't unload all of the Marines. Another problem is you unloaded a lot of the Marines in this tightly packed little area. But you do, I mean, the Doom Drop works well. And Doom Drops will always work well because it's a way to split your Marines without having to do anything. Your medevacs split them for you, and that's awesome. But you didn't get away with the medevacs, and so yeah, you traded evenly. So that Doom Drop was successful because in TVZ Uber Ups, your goal is twofold: have more money than him. I mean, spend more money than him on your army, and trade evenly often. And you did that second goal. You traded evenly often. So the Doom Drop was successful, and they will tend to almost always be successful. The big problem was that he had a much bigger army than you, and that's because at this point in the game, you're basically not mining, and you've got a very cost-ineffective army, and you let both of the players max out, and yeah. Anyway, so good opening, bad what you do behind the macro. You didn't macro behind the opening, and then you mined out your third, couldn't secure a fourth. I think you actually probably do secure a fourth and stuff, but at this point you're pretty darn far behind. This is really good though, because every one of your losses so far has been, I did not successfully execute the build. I did not have the stuff that I should have had. You've never lost when you macroed properly. So that rule of, you know, write down the benchmarks and make sure you hit them, and if you didn't, that's why you lost. So far that rule is 100%, man. Every one of these losses is because you didn't hit a specific benchmark. Ooh, a TVP.